And so it was, I think, what I remember more is just the strangeness of, for the first time, seeing people who looked like me, hearing people who had voices and mannerisms, believe it or not, having been raised in a completely different environment, similar mannerisms and expressions and, just ways of being that were hardwired into me. And I think when you sort of go into that, it's like, oh, like I'm getting reflected back a little bit of me. This makes it okay. And you get through the fear pretty quickly.
Okay.
And then you sort of have the challenges of how do we navigate this in an open and honest way when, you're suddenly thrown together as though you should have a connection because you're biologically connected, but you don't have that experiential connection or that relationship that hasn't been built up over time, right?
Fear stops us from achieving our true greatness. Are you a professional woman who is feeling stuck, unmotivated, or burned out? Are you worried about your wellness? Are you letting fear stop you from crushing your goals? If you answered yes to any or all of these, then this is the podcast for you. Dr. Charmaine Gregory, night shift emergency physician, burnout thriver, and wellness champion, along with everyday heroes just like you, will explore how to face fear in our lives and emerge victoriously.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode. Be sure to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you get notified when the next video comes out. It only takes 2 seconds to make 2 clicks. So let's do it. Let's get back to the video. Hello. Fearless Freedom Tribe. This is Dr. G, and we are back with another exciting episode of Fearless Freedom with Dr. G podcast. And today we have not one, but we actually have 2 amazing guests. And the guests that are going to be with us today are Dr. Anne Dranitsaris. Dear Lord. Oh, this is so embarrassing. Okay, let's start over. Reset. Okay, we have Dr. Anne Dranitsaris. Is that right? Okay, yes. Sorry about that. And Heather Hilliard. And so these 2 amazing women are going to tell us all about who they are and what they are up to.
You cut out there. Sorry, Charmaine.
Oh, okay. These 2 amazing women are going to tell us who they are and what they are up to.
Go ahead, Anne.
All right. So Heather and I have been partners for 25 years at this point in time. And we come at our business, our entrepreneurial business, from both a consulting and a personal development perspective, marrying both the whole world of psychological health and development with organizational systems, personal systems, career growth and development. But overall, our purpose and how we meet our potential in work is through helping people achieve their own potential in a variety of different ways.
Okay, that's awesome.
Anne and I have a little bit of a different story of origin in that while we've been business partners for 25 years, she's also my biological mother.
Oh, fantastic.
And Anne and I met when I was 27, and we went into business together 3 years later when we were still forging our personal relationship. We decided to start a business aimed at combining kind of her unique background, which is as a psychotherapist and as an executive coach, with mine, which was more in the organizational consulting and design work. And so we both have this, drive to help people achieve their potential and to help organizations achieve their potential. And so everything that we do is sort of bringing those 2 things together. And I guess you can say the apple didn't fall too far from the tree, given that my interests are so aligned with her interests that 25 years later, we're still working together and loving it.
Oh my. I have so many questions.
Go for it.
Well, okay. First of all, how did you, I mean, I guess like that is like, you just drop like an anvil and then you're just like, la, 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 it's not a big deal. Like, yeah, my biological mother and I got together, we started a business. I'm like, what? Okay. So first of all, how did you, like, tell us about how you decided to and were able to find your mom.
Yeah, so if I can just start that out
Sure.
in Canada, our social service agencies, you can register when you give a child up for adoption. You can register with the adoption agency so that when the child that you've given up comes of age, they can, if they decide to, they can search you out. And I
Oh,
know
that's
things have,
fantastic.
yes, I know. And so both
Wow.
myself and Heather's paternal grandmother registered with the agency.
Okay.
And so when Heather decided she was on the verge of getting married, she decided that it might be a good thing for her to have a medical background and know,
Sure.
her genealogy. She decided to look me up, look her biological roots up, as it were.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it was
great.
actually, the truth was I'd filled out the form to get my medical records as a first step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I got a call from the agency and said, "Oh, we're so sorry. We've already let your grandmother know, and now we've let your mother know that you've been in contact." And I'm like, "What?" So they fast
Wow.
tracked me, right? So I
Yeah.
went from thinking I was going to get a bunch of information where I could control my experience to like full on into. And it's a really interesting thing when you think about the notion of potential is in this whole conversation about nature versus nurture, which Anne
Yeah.
and I have a unique perspective around, because here I was put up for adoption. I was raised in an adoptive environment where I wasn't like anybody in my family. Like I was like the foreign entity, right? The alien that got like plunked into this family. And yet when I met Anne, it was like, oh, like this makes sense, right? Like I make sense in a way because I now have a frame of reference which was so different from my upbringing. And I go, and this is part of what we love in the work that we do, is helping people to understand their personality, their brain organization, and kind of, yeah, this is you, this is the way you're designed. And so I finally felt like I was okay, right? It was having grown up in this, where my parents weren't always sure quite what to do with me, and my siblings were quite different, into this place of, oh, well, I get it now, and I can see this. And because of the work that Anne had done, and Anne's knowledge, it also gave me a lot more insight into it. And but I always find it really fascinating that I was so interested in, already before I met her. And that's what I think forged our relationship so well, is we had that shared interest and passion intellectually. And that's the basis on which we came together. And then we sort of forged the friendship and the longer term family relationship out of it as well.
Wow. That's phenomenal. Really. Wow. I mean, that's just okay. And then so did you have any, so when you, so you, it sounds like it was a happy accident, right? Because you were just looking for the information to begin your life and make sure that you had all the data that you needed in order to, basically make your plan, I guess, for family planning, etc. But like then you find out that your mom and your grandma are available for you to access. And was there any fear involved in that? Like, was there fear involved in meeting them for the first time, establishing a relationship, asking questions? I don't know. Was there
Yeah, well,
fear involved
I'll
in
talk
that?
about mine first, and I'll let Anne go. But yeah, absolutely. Like there's, you sort of, if your own family, your own biological connection aren't going to like you, sort of, where does that leave you a little bit, right? And because I grew up in an environment where I always felt a little bit like an outsider with my adoptive family, it was like I was thinking, oh, is this going to be more of the same? And so I was very tentative. And I think the other thing that was quite different was I wasn't looking for a mother. And so my interest in it was not because, I had this horrible experience, sort of in my adoptive life, and that I was sort of looking for something, better. I was 27. I wasn't 18 when I did this, right? I was 27. And so it was, I think, what I remember more is just the strangeness of, for the first time, seeing people who looked like me, hearing people who had voices and mannerisms, believe it or not, having been raised in a completely different environment, similar mannerisms and expressions and, just ways of being that were hardwired into me. And I think when you sort of go into that, it's like, oh, like I'm getting reflected back a little bit of me. This makes it okay. And you get through the fear pretty quickly.
Okay.
And then you sort of have the challenges of how do we navigate this in a, an open and honest way when, you're suddenly thrown together as though you should have a connection because you're biologically connected, but you don't have that experiential connection or that relationship that hasn't been built up over time, right?
And it's that difference with Heather and I, where we came at it from a more rational brain approach as opposed to, oh my God, it's my daughter and I just want to hug her and sit with her and, talk about our feelings about this separation. It wasn't so much that, because my brain style isn't necessarily warm and fuzzy, and but I had been longing for the event for so many years. My fear was about, what if she doesn't like me? What if we don't have anything in common? All of the what if she stored up all of this emotional resentment because she had such a horrible upbringing? And that didn't happen. It was more that coming together and trying to find connections based on more of what we're both passionate about, which is our work. And so our personality types, our brain organization certainly helped us through those initial, as Heather said, those forging of the bonds based on our work.
Nice.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, it's just an incredible story. I am still like a little bit like mesmerized by it. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So
and
then
the fact
now
we're both, there's only a 17-year age difference between the two of us. And,
okay.
we know how to play together and have fun together.
Well, that's good. That's good. That's important.
Lovely, yes.
Oh my gosh. And so now tell us how is it that you, Heather, like how is it that you got into this line of work? Because it sounds like you kind of were already on the trajectory, and then it just happened that, you were able to align with Anne, as part of it.
Yeah, sometimes I say she kind of had me to as an extension of her, right? When you sort of think about what I was pursuing. So I went to business school for university, and went into human resources because I was always really curious about people and performance, and I ended up in a consulting. I worked for one of the large global HR consulting firms where I was a partner in one of their offices. And most of my work was around, systems, performance systems, reward systems, leadership, we were starting to get into. And for me, though, what I felt I was missing in my own education and my own certification was I didn't have that psychological sort of side of things. Why aren't people complying? Why aren't people shifting their behavior? Why aren't we seeing the results from the systems that these systems are supposed to get? And interestingly, before I met Anne, I'd actually started taking psychology courses back in the version of before things were online, where they mailed you like tapes and cassettes that you plugged into your VCR and watched, right? But so I was doing that because I just had this curiosity. I had this sort of need inside of myself that I said, I've got to learn more about this. I have to understand this more because I think this is part of the missing puzzle. And so that's why it was really interesting Anne came into the mix. And of course, that's her strength. That's her knowledge base. That's, sort of the language that she introduced. And so the more we talked, it was sort of like I started pulling some of her knowledge and expertise into the work I was doing within this consulting firm. And then I started to realize that, my pace of wanting to impact on my clients was not aligned with this organization. They were very conservative, and I'm not sure we want to get into that. Of course, they're into all of it now, but sort of back then it was like,
You're a
and so
trailblazer at that point.
yeah, well, and I had my first child, and I was off on mat leave, and I thought I would go do something else that didn't quite work out. And then as Anne and I started talking about, well, what should I do next? Should I just go back into the consulting? I loved consulting. I loved doing that kind of work. And then we started talking about, well, why don't we do something together? Why don't we take all of that you've got and add it in with all of what Anne has, and go out with a consulting model that really integrated, the human side, the psychological, the brain, the, personality, the emotional drivers, with all of the systems and strategy and planning work that I do, and organizational design work, and bring it together, because we need both of those to get to those results, personally as entrepreneurs, personally in our careers and in our relationships, but also certainly in the organizational context.
Oh yeah, that is certainly a necessity. It's funny because I'm listening to you, and as you're saying, they are getting people to do the things. It's like it's definitely one thing to have the system set up. Well, I mean, even having a system is like a great first step. But yes, having the system set up, and then actually having, the participants actually participate is another situation. So no, that's great. And that's great that you had the insights to realize the disconnect. You know what I mean? Because it sounds like your peers at that time, and even the corporation that you were affiliated with, did not have that same insight.
No.
So that's good.
Think of the timing. I was coming up the other way in terms of my background being in psychotherapy and human development and psychological type, but also recognizing and myself taking courses in, I remember taking a course from Ryerson University called Management for the 80s, because they were just bringing in the concept of participative leadership at that time, coming out of that traditional model for leading people, because I recognized that there was a need for something over and above just understanding why one felt the way one did and how it was getting in the way of achieving results. And of course, most of my clients who were coming to me at the time were feeling stalled in their life and in their career because of the way their leaders were behaving. And so sort of coming together with this blend of both of us having our strengths in the areas, but also having a really keen interest in the other side of things as well, which really made it work for both of us.
Wow, that's great. Hey, it's Dr. G, and I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank you for listening to this episode. I'm so honored to have you here with me. Did you know that I can help you to get your own podcast started? With my podcasting launch course for professionals, I walk you through everything you need to know about starting a podcast. I'm with you every step of the way, from sign up to launching your show, with 5 episodes ready to go. There's a done for you version that's also available. If you would just rather just do recordings and leave the behind the scenes work up to us, then that one is definitely for you. But either way, we've got your back here at Fearless Freedom with Dr. G. Oh, if you already have a show and you need production services, we have monthly plans available for you. So check out the links in the episode show notes for more information. Let's get back to the show. And then so now different set of fears, okay, because you've found that you are each other's yin and yang, right? So you complete each other, and that's what makes it work. And so now you have started. Why are you laughing?
Mini me, you complete.
You're mini me, yes. I have a couple of those, so I understand. And so now it's like, You have, and it's so funny because they're like your personality. You're like looking in the mirror. You're like, really? Why are you like me? It's so crazy. But but it just happened to turn out that way. And so, you know, you've found that you gel really well. And then now you are starting on a venture. You're essentially starting a business together. And entrepreneurship, which you probably already knew, Anne, right? Because it sounds like you were already an entrepreneur prior to that.
Yeah.
It's not for the faint of heart. And, you know, it sounds, Heather, like you before this had not participated in this arena. Okay. All right. So did you have any fears when you decided to hang your shingle, quote unquote, and get the ball rolling on the business?
It's interesting because, and I'm dating myself, but, on being an entrepreneur and entrepreneurship was not something that got talked about when I was even in business school. It was sort of this movement towards supporting people in that direction. But, when I looked back at my childhood, I was the one on the street that was always trying to figure out how to make money. Right. And
Nice.
so I was the one that would organize all the kids to create fun houses and then charge the other kids a nickel to get in. I was the one who was always finding stuff to sell and having yard sales. So I think, there was a part of me that felt comfortable with it. And in the consulting environment, even though I was in a corporate environment, the fact is I was running my own business inside of that organization, in that they were my own clients. I knew how to get clients. I had a large portfolio of them. So it was an easier transition for me, I think, than if I had been coming out of a corporate job and moving into a self-employed consulting type role. And so I had all of that knowledge. And so it was a little bit of even if I only sell 10% of what I was, generating in revenue for this firm, I would be making more than they were paying me. So yeah.
Wow.
I was a female.
Is that always the case? Like,
I was a
crazy.
30-year-old female, right?
Undervalued.
So,
It's just crazy.
Down the totem pole on that one. So I think that made it easier for me because I felt like I had a decent safety net from that perspective.
Okay.
I knew I could sell 10 times what, I needed to in order to support my family. So I think that helped a lot. But I do think that every time Anne and I have sort of said, we're going to try and extend our business into something else, that fear still comes up, right? So it's like at the basic, we're good, but I think it's always sort of there, right? And as Anne and I were even trying to define exactly our model and how we were going to be different as consultants, I think that's where some of the fear comes up too. It's like, oh, don't I just go be what I was before? Like I'm going to come out with something different, and I'm going to pretend that I'm an expert on this people side when I'm not there yet, right? So there was a lot of fake it till you make it. When we were first getting going and getting the traction around it, specifically for me, right? But fortunately, I had Anne who would tell me what to say, would tell me how to do it. So I say sometimes I'm her puppet, right? So and then I could go off and deliver it in a way, because we were in 2 different cities, right? And so I could deliver it in a way that held our credibility and brought people to us. And so it was a very successful combination. But the fear is there. You can't get away from that. That's the reality.
Wow. But it's nice to have tools, which sounds like you had, which is fantastic. Wow.
We always advise people that, we can't get rid of our fear, but we always have to make sure that our ambition is stronger than our fear, and to focus on what we're going for instead of focusing on the fear, because it's normal and natural. It was uncertain, and as not just as entrepreneurs, but as visionaries in our field as well, and being willing to go ahead of the curve. We were stepping out into uncharted territory. They weren't talking about emotional intelligence mainstream. They weren't even talking about emotions. Right?
Wow.
We put the system in, and people should adapt to the system. And of course, they never did, right? They had all kinds of reasons. And so we were not talking about fear per se, but talking about how emotions drive behavior, and you have to know how to deal with your employee resistance. And so that was our foot in the door, and then starting to talk about it over time as mainstream caught up with what we were doing.
No, that's great. That's good. That's good insight, because it helps, those who are listening, because, it's always interesting to hear how people face their fears, like how do they still become high achievers, despite the fact that, fear can like make you not go anywhere.
Yes, it can.
So, and the fact that you like, don't let that be a hard stop and you keep going is remarkable. So, we're always interested in hearing how.
Yeah, we always talk to our clients about the fact that, in our brains, we've got the part of it that's envisioning the future and says, I want to be big and I want to be out there and I want to be successful and, I want to achieve this, and however they define that. But then there's the other part of their brain that's saying, whoa, wait a minute, comfort zone, stay small, know your place. And coming up with all kinds of things like you don't have enough experience, or you don't have the right credentials, or you don't have and so when we navigate that, and even when it comes up for us, we always say, as you write down all of those fears on a piece of paper on the left-hand side and on the right, it's like, what, one, are we being objective here with this? But two, what will help, right? What is it that will help? Because that fear moves us out of that place of objectivity, and we need to stay in the objective if we're going to move forward, right? And again, as we've said, it's not that the fear isn't there, it's just whether or not we listen to that voice over the voice of our ambition, as Anne says, right?
No, that's great. That's a fantastic pearl. Thank you for sharing that. Because I'm like, I had the visual as you're saying it. I was like seeing the paper and I was like, okay, well, yes, this will go on this side and it will go on the other. So that's very helpful for those of us who are visual learners.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. And so now you have to tell us, how can, so say someone's listening and they feel like you two are their people, right? How would they get in contact with you, or how would they be able to reach you?
Heather, you go ahead with that.
Yeah. So all of our sort of resources and our contact information is sort of stored in one place. So it's Dranitsaris-Hilliard.com. So just the spelling of Anne's last name, -Hilliard.com. And you can reach us through that website, but it also has a ton of resources. It gives you information about the books that we've written, our access to our YouTube channel and our podcast, and everything is there as well. So even if you're looking to learn more about us and learn about some of the things we're out there talking about, everything can be found at Dranitsaris-Hilliard.com.
Okay, so that's for people who are listening. That's DRANITSARIS-HILLIARD, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And just to add to that, Charmaine, one of our signature products and services that we offer is based on a quiz that we wrote for Oprah magazine. It's called Who Are You Meant to Be? And we based our Striving Styles personality system based on this and psychological type. And so if people want to go another route, they can find out more information on how to determine their brain style on whoareyoumeanttobe.com.
whoareyoumeanttobe.com. Okay, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
That's awesome. What a great conversation, ladies. I really appreciate you.
Fun.
Yeah. And so we're at that part of the show where we have a tradition, and it is fill in the blanks. Are you ready for our tradition? Yay. All right, great. Okay, so the first one is, if I am fearless, I will.
Which one of us wants to go first? Go ahead, Anne. You're ready.
I'll go with this one. I will be on my path to achieving my potential, with the caveat that nobody is ever fearless. It's just that we've set our fears aside in order to powerfully move in the direction of our ambition and our potential.
Nice. I love it. Okay. All
And-
right. So I guess, Heather, you gonna get the next one, or are you gonna also answer this one? Okay. All right. Fine. No worries. Okay. So the next one is, to me, fearless freedom means.
So it means that I am staying focused on and putting all of my energy into that which really, sort of satisfies me and my potential. So I'm doing the work I love with the people I love, with in the places that I want to be doing it, and having that life that I envision, right? So that's what fearless freedom means to me.
Cool. And then the last one, I mean, I don't know if maybe you have one together, I'm not sure, or if they're individual, but my battle cry is.
It might be something along the lines of power past your fears or power past anything that is getting in the way of achieving potential. Because, Charmaine, most of our work is about helping people see that they have the power to choose. And every time they give away their power and are at the mercy of their fears, then it's really hard to step into that place of fearless freedom, because they're too involved in focusing on what their fears actually are and how to get rid of them, as opposed to just powering past the fear and moving in that direction of whatever they're going for.
Okay. Yeah,
mine was power up. So very
power up. Well, see, power through, power past, and power up
to that
Fantastic.
potential. Let's go.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. It's great. So thank you so much, ladies, for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend some time with us here at the Fearless Freedom Tribe. We appreciate it. We appreciate the pearls. We appreciate you being so candid and sharing your story. We do not take any of that sharing lightly. So we really appreciate you. And we absolutely know that you're going to continue to make an incredible impact on this world.
Well,
Thank you, Charmaine.
Yeah, thank you, Charmaine, for your questions and your interest and your curiosity, because that always brings out the best in guests from our experience in podcasting.
Well, thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. I work on it. So awesome. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Fearless Freedom with Dr. G. Again, I'm Dr. G. And if you like this episode, be sure to subscribe so that you can get notified of when the next episode is going to be. And also, I'll catch you next time. Have a great one. Be strong, be brave, and unleash your greatness.